Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, and let's get to this first question. Alright. If you have digestive problems, i.e. absorption in your gut, is compromised, but you still like lifting, I get it will take longer to progress, but would it be better to reduce the volume you lift so you recover better? I found if I ran your 5x5 3 days a week, I never recovered. I found if I reduced the volume and went 2 days a week, I found I progressed much easier. Also, I progressed better if I deloaded every 4 weeks instead of 6. All right, we don't really need to go any further with his question because we get the gist of it there. All right, so let's get to that. You know what? People who have absorption problems are going to struggle with recovery. You know what? That's normal. But it sounds to me like you've taken a very intelligent approach to dealing with it. Basically, you've realized, hey, I can't get as much food in. I can't absorb as many calories. I'm not going to absorb as much fat. I'm not going to absorb as many proteins and amino acids. I'm going to have to tone down my training. And what did you find when you cut down the volume and the frequency and you train twice a week with 60% of the volume I recommend? You've been able to recover. You've been able to make progress. So there you have it. There's your magic secret. As long as you're consistent with progressive overload and you're using a proven program of any type or a proven progression system, even if you need to cut back for any purpose in your life, maybe you're not getting the sleep you need, maybe you're not getting the nutrition you need, and someone with an absorption issue in their gut is having the same problem someone would have who can't get enough calories in, right? It doesn't matter as far as your recovery is concerned if those calories are due to malabsorption or if they're due to low appetite. Not really as far as your muscles are concerned. All your muscles know is they're not getting the nutrition you need. But you're scaling back the training, therefore you're reducing the load on your body, you're making recovery easier, and you're using less calories. Well, if you're not absorbing enough calories, using less calories is a pretty helpful tool. And you figured it out on your own without me having to answer it, but this is something that other people can look at. If you have something going on in your life to where you can't get the energy intake and the nutrition you need to recover and make the progress you want to make, if you reduce your workload, your weekly workload, your weekly volume, you might find that you can recover and progress anyways. Is it going to be as fast as if you were able to get more food in? And in this case, it doesn't matter whether you can't get it in your mouth or you can't get it in your bloodstream. The end result's the same. Maybe your appetite's too low. Maybe you have a really, really busy job to where you burn so many calories that you're struggling to eat enough to keep up. Well, you're going to have to cut back your training loads no matter what the situation is because you're having a recovery and energy issue versus an energy intake issue. So you reduce your need for recovery, reduce your need for energy, problem solved. And this would apply to anyone in any of those situations. It doesn't have to be just a GI tract absorption issue. So hopefully that clarifies that. All right, next question. Hey Jason, you mentioned that measuring food on a scale leads to eating disorders. I'm actually going through a phase now that I'm staying from my kitchen scale since I feel obsessive about it. But how do you recommend losing weight without measuring food? All right, great question. And let me clarify there. When I talk about eating disorders, I don't mean that everyone who measures their food is going to get an eating disorder. It is the obsession with it. When you're obsessed to the point to where you cannot go out for a meal to a restaurant without measuring things, then that's when you got a problem. Because you know what? If you order a 6-ounce sirloin steak and a large baked potato and some broccoli, you can always look that up in 30 seconds online. There's apps, there's web pages everywhere that'll tell you how many calories are in a 6-ounce steak. It'll tell you roughly how many calories are in a baked potato. And you could figure there's 20 or 25 calories in the broccoli. You're done. You don't have to sit there and obsessively measure anything. It isn't necessary. But for people who have to go and measure things even when they can't go out to eat, they can't do family functions because they can't eyeball foods, they can't get estimates, to keep a rough track of their caloric intake, because they're so obsessed with the scale and getting it perfect, those are the people who are developing an eating disorder. And that's because, you know what, you can't perfectly track your calories. You're going to be very, very lucky even using a food scale if you get within 10%. Meaning what you're calling 3,000 calories, if it's between 2,700 and 3,300, you've been successful. Because even a scale won't get you closer than that. Also, you don't know how many calories you're burning a day. You have a 10% margin for error easily, no matter what you do, if not more. So this obsessive tracking does lead to eating disorders, because it's focusing on something, and something is causing you stress and an obsession in your life that actually probably isn't even as important as you think it is. Plenty of people successfully lose body weight just eyeballing. By going in and looking up online that a 6-ounce sirloin has about 315 calories or whatever it happens to be. I'm probably wrong there. I just guessed it off the top of my head. And that baked potato probably has 150 calories. They should just be able to, I probably threw in 25 for some broccoli, another 100 for some other stuff. I'm at roughly 550 calories for that meal. Done. That's all they need to do without measuring anything. Same thing when you buy packets of meat. I mean, if you're eating fairly lean meats, you're not going to get the calories that far off just by guesstimating how much. Well, that was a 2-pound pack of chicken. I used about a third of it. That's it. That's all you need. That should be able to get you close enough to be able to know if you are gaining or losing weight. Just avoid the really high fatty foods. Those are the foods that are going to mess you up the most. They're going to be high fat foods. Everything else you already know. You already know that your bread that you consume, your whole wheat bread, has about 110 calories per slice. You need to measure it? No. Again, it's the really calorically dense stuff that gets you into trouble. The things with tons of fat and no fiber in them. That's where you get messed up. And you shouldn't need to measure anything if you're not eating those sort of foods for the most part. And you know what? Even if you have a one-off day to where you go and eat something like that, or you eat a bunch of calorically dense foods, it's probably not going to affect you in the grand scheme of things if you do it for one meal at a get-together. As long as your overall weekly intake is at a slight deficit, you're going to lose body fat. It isn't necessary for people to be that obsessive. It is this obsession that creates the eating disorders and problems that people have in this community. And if you are one of those people prone to obsession, yeah, you need to avoid the food scale. Learn to just eyeball your food. Plenty of experts do that. Plenty of experts teach other people to do that. Alan Aragon's a perfect example that I can think of, and he even preps bodybuilders sometimes. He's an eyeball method guy. He has a master's in nutrition, and he knows how to keep a healthy relationship with food. It's just part of his job. So it's totally doable. All right, next question. I failed a max effort deadlift yesterday, and I noticed my sticking point is always just below the knee. What's the best way to work past these sort of things? Block pulls from the sticking point or just deadlift more? All right, brother, you're not going to like my answer. Actually, you might like my answer. If your sticking point is below the knee at all, your problem is speed off the floor. You're too slow off the floor. You need to do more pulling from the floor, dead stop training, learn to take pauses and reset the weight on every single rep of your deadlift. Stop doing touch and go. And you need to realize you don't have a sticking point. If you're like, well, my sticking point, I pulled 500 pounds just fine, but I went to 510 or 515, my sticking point was just below the knee. Have you considered that you're just not strong enough to deadlift 515 pounds? I mean, your sticking point is off the floor because you can't pull 515 fast enough from the floor to get past your sticking point, right? But have you considered you're just not strong enough to pull 515? You just need to get stronger on the deadlift, and then your sticking point will go away and a heavier weight will stick. This idea of the sticking points can be a bit silly, but if you really feel that you want to work on that sticking point, there's another solution. You need to get faster and stronger off the floor. You get stronger off the floor by not doing touch and go, and if you have to, by doing deficit deadlifts. Start with a 1-inch deficit and maybe try a 3-inch later, but a 1-inch should work. Try using some 1-inch boots. You guys see me in my deadlifts the last few months. I deadlift in boots with a 1-inch sole. That creates a 1-inch deficit. That forces me to get tighter and to pull faster off the floor to get the weight moving, because I'm pulling an extra inch further and deeper off the floor than I normally do and have done with more minimalist shoes. So you can do little things like that to easily create a deficit. Put some work boots on and pull for a while. And when you get to where you can pull your 500 and then 505 with the boots, that 515, when you go back to a more minimalist sole, is going to blast right off the floor. Failing that, you could stand on some 1 or 2 inch plates. Done. That'll get you past your sticking point, because basically, number one, You're just too weak to deadlift the weight you want to deadlift, and that's okay. We all have strength limits. No one is limitlessly strong. You will always find a weight that's too heavy for you. But if you really want to work on your weakest point on it, you need to understand where it originates. In this case, if you're sticking even an inch below the knee, I promise you, you are too slow off the floor. You're not generating enough speed and power when you are breaking the weight off the floor. If you were, there's no way you would be sticking there. So you don't need to be working from your sticking point. You need to be working from further below it. You just need to get faster off the floor. All right, next question. Jason, I recently discovered through blood work that my T3 and T4 thyroid levels are rather low. I was wondering if, among other things, these hormones affect gaining muscle and strength as well as other hormones like testosterone and cortisol. Thanks for the insight. All right, testosterone and cortisol is a whole different topic. Let's focus just on your T3. You need to be asking yourself, why is your T3 low? Have you been dieting? Your carbs too low? That's how that happens for most people. Dieting too hard with too low of carbohydrates and too low of calories. Or you've cut down too lean. If your T3 and T4 levels are too low, it's because you have cut to an unhealthy body fat, and your hormone, that's how your hormone profile responds. What you'll also find, once T3 and T4 start going down, you lose another couple pounds, your testosterone levels are going to go down next. Why? Because you're too lean, you're at an unhealthy body fat, or you've dieted too fast and too hard for the body fat you're currently at, even if you're at a healthy level. That's what's going on. You're going to need to add more carbs to your diet and bring your calories back up and see if that corrects the problem. For some people, the chronic excessive dieting and getting too lean can cause a permanent shutdown of these hormones. The downside of getting ripped, it's not healthy. It causes you problems. And yeah, it will cause you serious long-term problems if those get shut down in the long term. Now, that being said, will they affect muscle gains? You know what? Very minimally. Does T3, not T4, because T4 is inactive. T3 is your metabolically active form of thyroid hormone. If T3 is too low, it might slightly inhibit protein synthesis. You might gain slightly less muscle, but the upside is you'll have to eat less food to get there because your metabolism will be slightly lower. But is it going to be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things? Is it going to prevent you from making a good muscle gains? No, not really. When I'm talking about a minor inhibiting of muscle gains, it's very minimal. You know, it might cost you a few percent, maybe 10% less muscle than you might have gained, but a good program and the right food, you should be able to get that back on track. And what you're probably going to find, unless you've got another medical issue going on, and only your doctor can diagnose this, once you start increasing your calories and you start getting stronger and start trying to gain muscle again, and your carbohydrates go up and your overall activity goes up to compensate, you will find that your T3 levels will probably come back up. They will hopefully come back up to the normal range, and this will disappear anyways. They're probably too low because you've probably been dieting too much. That's the cause for most healthy young people who seem to have problems like that. And if that isn't the cause, then obviously your doctor is going to need to diagnose what's really going on, because there could be something a lot more serious happening. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 3.